I stood at the head of the mahogany conference table, holding a scrap of neon pink lace like it was a holy relic. Harrison looked like he was having a stroke. The 6 board members were staring at me, then at the underwear, then back at me. They say you shouldn't air your dirty laundry in public, but nobody ever said anything about airing your husband's mistress's lingerie during a quarterly fiscal review. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. The silence in the house was the first thing that felt wrong. It wasn't just quiet. It was the kind of heavy, suffocating stillness you find in a museum after closing hours. I stood in the foyer, my carry-on bag digging a groove into my shoulder, listening for the usual hum of our lives. Usually, the air purifier in the living room would be whirring, or the dishwasher would be churning through its cycle, or Harrison would have left the television on low for the dog we kept talking about getting, but never actually adopted. But today, there was nothing. Just the settling of the floorboards and the sound of my own heart beating a little too fast in my ears. I shouldn't have been home until Friday. The client in Chicago had canceled the merger meeting due to a compliance issue, which in my line of work usually meant someone had found a discrepancy in the books that couldn't be explained away with creative accounting. I had caught the earlier flight out of O'Hare, skipped the overpriced airport salad, and rushed home, fantasizing about surprising Harrison with takeout from that Italian place he loved. I pictured his face lighting up. I pictured us drinking wine on the patio. Now, standing in the entryway, that fantasy felt foolish. I dropped my keys in the bowl. The clatter sounded like a gunshot. "Harrison!" I called out. My voice didn't echo, but it fell flat, absorbed instantly by the expensive drapes and the plush rugs we had spent 3 weekends picking out. I walked into the kitchen. It was spotless. Too spotless. The counters were wiped down with a precision that Harrison simply did not possess. He was a man who left coffee rings on granite and crumbs on the floor. But the island was gleaming. It smelled like lemon verbena and bleach, a chemical mask over the natural scent of the house. I moved to the bedroom. The door was ajar. I pushed it open and stared at the bed. It was made. Not just pulled up, but military-grade made. The corners were tucked tight. The pillows were arranged in a perfect pyramid. Harrison never made the bed. He called it futile labor since we were just going to get back into it at night. I walked over to the nightstand. There was a coaster there, centered perfectly. I frowned. My internal alarm bells, usually reserved for finding hidden liabilities in a company's ledger, began to ring softly. Something had happened here. Someone had cleaned this room with the specific intent of erasing evidence. I sat on the edge of the mattress to take off my heels. As I shifted, my hand brushed against something hard under the fitted sheet, right near the edge of the mattress. It felt like a lump of coal in a stocking. I frowned. I stood up and peeled back the duvet. Then I pulled up the fitted sheet. There, tucked between the mattress and the box spring, was a ball of fabric. I reached out and pulled it free. It unspooled in my hands like a serpent. It was a bodysuit. Neon pink lace, high-cut legs with straps so thin they looked like fishing line. It was aggressive, it was cheap, and it was absolutely, undeniably not mine. I stared at it. My brain did a strange, stutter step. The first thought was denial, swift and protective. Maybe I bought this? I thought. Maybe I bought this years ago for a bachelorette party and forgot about it. I turned it over in my hands. The tag scratched against my thumb. I looked at it. The brand was Vixen Vibe. I had never heard of it. The size was marked XS, extra small. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I am a solid medium. On a good day, after a stomach flu, I might squeeze into a small, but an extra small would require surgical removal of a rib. This wasn't mine. It couldn't be mine. My throat tightened. I felt a wave of nausea roll over me. I looked at the empty room, the perfectly made bed, the lemon-scented air. It wasn't a surprise gift. You don't hide a gift under the mattress. You hide things under the mattress when you hear a car door slam in the driveway and you have 3 seconds to panic. I sat there, holding the neon pink evidence, and listened to the silence of my house. It didn't feel like a sanctuary anymore. It felt like a crime scene. The sound of the garage door opening 40 minutes later sent a jolt of electricity straight into my spine. I had moved to the living room chair, the one facing the door, sitting in the dark like a villain in a noir film. I hadn't turned on a single light. I wanted to see his face when he walked in. I wanted to see the exact microsecond where comfort turned to panic. I heard his heavy footsteps in the hallway. He was humming. Actually humming. It was a cheerful, mindless tune that made my blood boil. He dropped his gym bag with a thud. "Honey, I'm home," he called out, his voice booming with that fake theatricality he used when he was in a good mood. He flipped the light switch. The sudden brightness stung my eyes. He saw me instantly. "Jesus!" He jumped back, clutching his chest. "Valerie, you scared the hell out of me. Why are you sitting in the dark?" He recovered quickly. Too quickly. A genuine shock usually takes a few seconds to process, but Harrison smoothed his features into a smile within a heartbeat. He walked over, arms open for a hug. "You're back early," he said. "I thought you were landing Friday. Did something happen? Is everything okay?" I didn't stand up. I didn't hug him back. I just watched him. He looked good. He looked rested. He looked like a man who hadn't a care in the world. He was wearing his expensive workout gear, the brand that costs more than a car payment, but he didn't look sweaty. "The meeting got canceled," I said. My voice sounded foreign, scratchy and low. "I caught the 3 o'clock. "That's great," he said, leaning down to kiss my forehead. I turned my head slightly and his lips landed on my hairline. He pulled back, a flicker of confusion crossing his eyes. "Babe, what's wrong? You look intense." I reached beside me into the cushion of the chair and pulled out the pink bodysuit. I held it up by one strap. It dangled between us, a neon accusation. "I found this," I said, "under the mattress, on your side." Harrison looked at the bodysuit. His eyes didn't widen. His jaw didn't drop. Instead, a slow, soft smile spread across his face. It was the smile he used when he was explaining a simple concept to a difficult client. It was a smile of patience. It was a smile of condescension. "Oh, Val," he sighed, shaking his head. He chuckled, a low, warm sound. "You found it. I can't believe you found it. You are terrible at waiting, you know that?" I blinked. The reaction was so far removed from what I expected that I faltered. "What?" "It was supposed to be a surprise," he said, walking over and gently taking the lace from my hand. He held it up, admiring it. "Our anniversary is next month. I know, it's early. But I saw it in the window of that boutique downtown, and I just thought, well, I thought we could use a little spark. Things have been so busy lately with your travel." He looked at me with those big, soulful brown eyes. "I hid it because I didn't want you to see it until I had the whole evening planned. Dinner, wine, the works." My brain scrambled to catch up. An anniversary gift. It was plausible. We had been distant. He knew I worried about the spark. "But," I stammered, pointing at the tag. "Harrison, look at the size. It's an extra small. I haven't been an extra small since high school. You know that." Harrison laughed again, soft and forgiving. He reached out and stroked my cheek. "Sweetheart, don't do that. Don't do that thing where you put yourself down. You've been working out so hard. You look amazing." I honestly thought it would fit. The salesgirl said it runs big. She said the fabric stretches. He sighed, his face falling into a mask of disappointment. "I just wanted to make you feel sexy, Val. I wanted to do something nice. And now..." "Well, now you're looking at me like I'm a criminal because I bought the wrong size." The guilt hit me like a physical blow. He was twisting it. He was taking my discovery and turning it into my insecurity. He tried to do something nice, I thought. He tried, and I'm ruining it because I'm paranoid. I didn't mean I started, my voice wavering. It was under the mattress. Because I know you, he said softly. I know you go through the closet. I know you check the drawers. I wanted it to be a real surprise. I'm sorry if I messed up the size. I'll exchange it, okay? He leaned down and kissed me on the lips. It was a firm, possessive kiss. You're so tense, honey. You need to relax. Let me pour you a glass of wine. You're overthinking everything again, aren't you? Maybe, I whispered. I know you are, he said, walking toward the kitchen. It's what you do. I watched him go. I wanted to believe him. I desperately wanted to believe him. But as he walked away, I looked down at my hands. They were shaking. The bathroom door clicked shut and I locked it. I needed to know. Harrison was in the kitchen, opening a bottle of Cabernet, whistling that same mindless tune. The normalcy of it was driving me insane. If he was lying, he was a sociopath. If he was telling the truth, I was a monster. I had grabbed the bodysuit from the table when he wasn't looking. I needed empirical data. I needed proof. I stripped off my travel clothes, the blazer, the blouse, the slacks, until I was standing in my underwear in front of the full-length mirror. The fluorescent lights were unforgiving. I looked tired. There were shadows under my eyes that concealer couldn't hide. I picked up the pink lace. Runs big, he had said. The fabric stretches. I stepped into the leg holes. The fabric felt cheap and scratchy against my skin. I pulled it up. It stopped mid-thigh. I tugged harder. The elastic dug into my flesh, creating angry red indentations. I gritted my teeth and forced it up over my hips. It was a battle. A physical, humiliating battle against polyester and elastane. I got the bottom half up, but it was cutting off my circulation. I looked like a sausage casing about to burst. I tried to pull the straps up over my shoulders. I inhaled sharply, sucking in my stomach until my lungs burned. I got one strap up. The fabric was so tight across my chest, it flattened me completely. I reached for the second strap. Snap. A small sound, but in the tiled bathroom, it sounded like a whip crack. A seam near the rib cage had given way. I stood there, half in and half out of this neon torture device, staring at my reflection. I looked ridiculous. I looked desperate. And then, the clarity hit me. Harrison knew my body. He knew every inch of it. He knew I had hips. He knew I had a rib cage. He knew I wasn't a teenage girl. He hadn't bought this thinking it would fit me. He hadn't bought this thinking, Valerie will look great in this. He had bought this for a body that was significantly smaller than mine, a body that didn't have hips, a body that was an extra small. The pain of the elastic digging into my skin wasn't just physical anymore. It was the confirmation of the lie. The salesgirl didn't say it ran big. He didn't ask for my size. He bought it for someone else. And when I found it, he shoved it at me and told me I was crazy for doubting him. He wanted me to try it on. He wanted me to fail. He wanted me to feel fat and ungrateful so I would drop the subject. I peeled the bodysuit off, wincing as the lace scraped my skin. I threw it into the hamper, buried deep under a pile of towels. I looked at myself in the mirror one last time. My eyes were hard. He thought he had managed the situation. He thought a glass of wine and a guilt trip would smooth it over. I put my clothes back on. I fixed my hair. I unlocked the door. "Coming, honey," I called out. My voice was steady. It was the voice I used in boardroom negotiations when I knew the other side was lying about their assets. It was 3 a.m. when I woke up. I hadn't really slept. I had just hovered in a gray state of exhaustion while Harrison snored softly beside me. The rhythm of his breathing was infuriatingly peaceful. How could he sleep? How could he lie to my face, watch me struggle with my own self-worth, and then drift off like a baby? I turned my head. His phone was plugged into the charger on his nightstand. The little green light pulsed in the darkness. In 7 years of marriage, I had never checked his phone. I considered it a violation of the Geneva Convention of Relationships. We had privacy. We had trust. But trust was a currency, and Harrison had just spent his life savings on a pink bodysuit that didn't fit. I slid out of bed. The floorboards were cold. I moved like a ghost, inching toward his side of the room. I held my breath. If he woke up, what would I say? Just checking the time? Thought I heard a noise? I reached out and unplugged the phone. The screen lit up. A picture of our dog, the one we talked about getting, a stock photo he kept as a background, stared back at me. Enter passcode. I typed in his birthday. The screen shook. Incorrect. I frowned. That had been his code since 2015. I typed in our anniversary. Incorrect. My heart started to hammer against my ribs. Why would he change it? He never changed anything. He still used the same email password he had in college. I typed in his mother's birthday. Incorrect. I typed in the last 4 digits of his social security number. Incorrect. My fingers were trembling now. I looked at Harrison. He shifted, mumbling something in his sleep. I froze, clutching the phone to my chest, waiting for his eyes to open. He rolled over, facing away from me. I let out a shaky breath. I had one more guess before the timeout. I tried 1, 2, 3, 4. Phone disabled. Try again in 60 minutes. The message flashed on the screen like a neon go to hell. 60 minutes. An hour. I stared at the timer counting down. 59 minutes. 58 seconds. Panic surged through me. If he woke up in the morning and saw his phone was disabled, he would know. He would know I tried to break in. He would know I didn't believe the bodysuit story. He would spin it again. He would say, "You're spying on me? After I bought you a gift? You're paranoid, Val. You need help." I couldn't let him see the timer. I needed to put it back. But if I put it back plugged in and he woke up to check an email at 6:00 a.m., the timer would still be running. I stood there in the dark, calculating. It was 3:15 a.m. If the lockout was 60 minutes, it would unlock at 4:15 a.m. Harrison's alarm was set for 6:30 a.m. I had to stay awake. I had to wait for the timer to run out, ensure the screen returned to the normal password prompt, and then plug it back in. I sat on the floor on my side of the bed, phone in hand, watching the minutes tick by. Every second felt like an hour. My mind raced. Why change the code? Why now? What was in there that was worth protecting with a new sequence of numbers? Texts? Photos? Emails? I thought about the bodysuit. I thought about the extra small. I thought about the way he hummed in the kitchen. 40 minutes left. I sat in the dark holding the black mirror and realized that I didn't know the man sleeping 3 feet away from me. I knew his coffee order. I knew his social security number. I knew he was allergic to shellfish, but I didn't know his passcode, and apparently that was the only thing that mattered. The sun came up with a brutal cheerfulness that felt mocking. Harrison had left for work at 7 a.m., whistling, kissing me on the cheek, telling me to take a relaxation day. I had smiled, waved, and waited for the Tesla to back out of the driveway. The moment the garage door closed, I was moving. I didn't go to the computer. I didn't try the iPad. I went to the garage. We had a system for recycling. Paper in the blue bin, plastic in the green. Harrison was fastidious about it, or so he claimed. He usually dumped his pockets on the kitchen island, sorted the receipts, and tossed the junk. I walked over to the blue bin. It was half full. Junk mail, magazines, empty LaCroix boxes. I felt a wave of revulsion. Is this who I am? I thought. A woman digging through trash in her pajamas? It felt low. It felt dirty. It felt like something a crazy ex-girlfriend does in a bad movie. But the memory of the incorrect passcode screen flashed in my mind. The Dignity ship had sailed. I was swimming in the ocean of desperation now. I tipped the bin over. The contents spilled onto the cold concrete floor. I sat cross-legged and started sifting. Flyer for pizza. Trash. Credit card offer. Trash. Utility bill. Trash. Crumpled ball of white thermal paper. I picked it up. My hands were shaking slightly. I smoothed it out on my knee. It was a receipt. The salted oyster. Date yesterday. Time 12:45 p.m. Guests 2. I stared at the timestamp. Yesterday at 12:45 p.m. I was in meetings all day with the board, Harrison had said when I called him yesterday afternoon. Just sandwiches in the conference room. Boring stuff. I looked at the items ordered. 2 dozen oysters. 1 bottle of Sancerre. Chocolate lava cake. Harrison hated oysters. He called them snot in a shell. He wouldn't eat them if you paid him, and he never drank white wine. He was a Scotch or heavy red guy, so who ate the oysters? And who drank the Sancerre? And who was the second guest? I looked at the total. $184, paid with... I squinted at the bottom of the slip. Amex ending in 4092. I frowned. Our joint Amex ended in 8811. His personal Visa ended in 3520, 4092. I didn't know this card. I sat there on the garage floor, surrounded by trash, holding a receipt that proved 2 things. Harrison was lying about where he was, and Harrison had a credit card I didn't know existed. A secret card. A secret lunch. A secret life. The bodysuit wasn't an anniversary gift. It was part of a pattern. He was building a silo, a separate financial and emotional existence, brick by brick, right under my nose. I crumpled the receipt back up, then stopped. No, I needed evidence. I flattened it out again, took my phone, and snapped 3 clear photos of it. Then I folded it carefully and put it in my pocket. I shoved the rest of the trash back into the bin. I stood up, brushed the dust off my pajama pants, and walked back into the house. The nausea was gone. In its place was a cold, hard knot of calculation. I needed to find the source of the money. If there was a secret credit card, there had to be a way to pay it off. You can't pay a secret Amex with a joint checking account. I would see the transaction. I logged into our main bank portal on my laptop. Everything looked normal. Mortgage, utilities, groceries, no large withdrawals, no transfers to Amex 4092. But then I saw it. A withdrawal of $300 cash from an ATM in the financial district 3 days ago. And another one for $200 last week, $500 in cash in 2 weeks. Harrison never carried cash. He said it was inefficient. I grabbed my purse and drove to the bank branch on Main Street. I needed to see the physical checks. Sometimes the online descriptions were truncated. I needed the raw data. The bank was empty, smelling of stale coffee and carpet cleaner. I approached the teller, a young woman with elaborate acrylic nails who looked like she would rather be anywhere else. I need a printout of all transactions for the last 90 days for the joint checking account, I said, sliding my debit card and ID across the counter. She sighed, a long, audible exhale. You can get that online, you know. It saves paper. I am locked out of my online account, I lied smoothly, and I need it for a tax audit. Today. The word audit usually works wonders. She typed something, her nails clicking like hail on a tin roof. Okay, 1 sec. The printer whirred. She handed me a stack of papers. I took them over to a small table near the loan officer's cubicle. I took out a highlighter from my purse. I started scanning. Target, Whole Foods, gas station, mortgage, and then, on the second page, 3 weeks ago. Check number 1054. Amount $2,500. Payee LFS Holdings. I froze. $2,500? That was a mortgage payment. That was a vacation. I didn't recognize LFS Holdings. I pulled out my phone and Googled it. Nothing immediate, just some generic business registrations. I went back to the teller. Excuse me. This check, 1054. Do you have the image of the cashed check? If it cleared, yeah. She tapped again. Here. She turned the monitor toward me. It was Harrison's handwriting, spiky, rushed. But the payee line didn't say LFS Holdings. It was written out fully. Lux Flower Shop and Events. Lux Flower Shop, I whispered. $2,500 at a flower shop? I looked at the memo line. It was blank. Can you see the address of the merchant? I asked. Let me check the routing. She clicked a few times. Looks like it's the one in Seaport on Northern Avenue. Seaport, the trendy district, the expensive district. And, she added, squinting at the screen, it looks like there was a delivery note attached to the transaction record. Sometimes merchants upload that. Can you print it? Sure. She handed me another slip of paper. It was a digital capture of the receipt. Recipient, Chloe. Address, 342. Congress Street, apartment 4B. Message, can't wait for the weekend, H. The heir left the room, Chloe. Address on Congress Street, can't wait for the weekend. The weekend, I was supposed to be in Chicago. I folded the paper. My hands were numb. I felt like I was floating outside my body. Is there anything else? The teller asked. No, I said. That's everything. I walked out of the bank into the bright, blinding sunshine. The cars were driving by. People were walking their dogs. The world was spinning on its axis, completely indifferent to the fact that my life had just ended on a piece of thermal paper. $2,500 on flowers. An apartment in the Seaport. Chloe. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I got into my car, locked the doors, and sat there for a long time, staring at the steering wheel. Okay, I said aloud to the empty car. Okay. The tears could wait. I had an address. Thursday was supposed to be gym night. For 3 years, gym night had been a sacred institution in our marriage, a 2-hour block where Harrison went to the Equinox in Chestnut Hill to presumably lift heavy things and sweat out the stress of private equity. I usually used the time to catch up on emails or do a face mask. It was a comfortable rhythm. Now, sitting in my car 2 streets down from our driveway, the rhythm felt like a taunt. I had parked my Volvo behind a large oak tree, the engine off, the lights dark. It was late October and the temperature had dropped to 40 degrees. I was wearing a trench coat over my pajamas, shivering not just from the cold, but from the adrenaline coursing through my veins like ice water. I felt ridiculous. I felt like a stalker in my own life. Is this what it comes to? I thought, rubbing my hands together to generate friction. A senior consultant with 2 degrees and a 401k, hiding in a bush like a teenager? The shame was a physical weight in my stomach. I wanted to go inside. I wanted to turn up the heat, pour a glass of wine, and pretend the receipt for the oysters didn't exist. I wanted to pretend the pink lace was just a mistake. But the consultant in me wouldn't allow it. Denial is a liability. You have to audit the books. At 7:15, the garage door opened. The Tesla slid out, silent and sleek, looking like a spaceship against the suburban backdrop. Harrison turned left. The gym was right. I waited 5 seconds, counting them out loud. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, my breath fogging the windshield. Then I turned the ignition. The engine sputtered. No, I whispered, gripping the wheel. Do not do this to me. It sputtered again, then caught. I didn't turn on the headlights. I crept forward, keeping a safe distance. He was heading toward the highway. If he was going to the gym, he would take the first exit. If he was going to the Seaport, to Chloe, to the apartment on Congress Street, he would stay on the pike. My heater wasn't working. Of course it wasn't. The fan blew cold air against my legs. I gritted my teeth. I focused on the red taillights ahead of me. They were the only reality that mattered. He signaled for the exit. My heart leaped. He's going to the gym, I thought. A wave of relief so potent it made me dizzy washed over me. He's actually going to the gym. The oysters were a business lunch. The flowers were for a client named Chloe. It's all a misunderstanding. Then, at the last possible second, the Tesla swerved back into the center lane. He had feigned the exit. He wasn't going to the gym. He was going into the city. The relief evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard fury. He was going to her. On a Thursday, during gym night, I pressed the gas pedal. I wasn't shivering anymore. I followed him for 10 miles. I stayed 3 cars back, using a large delivery truck as a shield. My mind was racing, running simulations of what would happen when we arrived. Would I confront him on the sidewalk? Would I wait until he went inside and then buzz the intercom? Create a scene. A voice in my head whispered, "Scream, throw rocks at the window." "No," the consultant countered. "Gather data. Do not show your hand until you have leverage." We were passing the exit for Newton when it happened. The sky opened up. It wasn't just rain, it was a deluge, a sudden New England squall that turned the highway into a gray blur. The wipers slapped frantically against the glass. I squinted, trying to keep the Tesla's taillights in view. They were fading, two blurry red eyes in the mist. I sped up. I couldn't lose him. If I lost him now, I would never know for sure. I changed lanes aggressively, cutting off a Honda. I didn't care. I needed to close the gap. Thunk. It was a sickening sound, metal hitting deep asphalt. A pothole hidden by a puddle swallowed my front passenger tire. The car lurched violently to the right. The steering wheel jerked in my hands like a living thing. Thump, 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 thump. The rhythm of failure. "No!" I screamed, slamming my hand against the dashboard. "No, no, no!" I wrestled the car to the breakdown lane, the hazard lights clicking a mocking tempo. I watched through the rain-streaked windshield as the red taillights of the Tesla grew smaller and smaller, disappearing into the gray curtain of the storm. He was gone. I sat there, the car listing to the side, the rain hammering on the roof. I was stranded on the side of I-90 in the dark, in the cold, chasing a husband who didn't want me. I picked up my phone to call ALA. My fingers were numb. "Service wait time is approximately 90 minutes, the automated voice said cheerfully. I hung up. I put my head on the steering wheel and let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. It was the sound of total defeat. The universe wasn't just indifferent. It was actively conspiring against me. I sat there for an hour watching the cars fly by, splashing dirty water onto my windshield. I thought about Harrison arriving at the apartment on Congress Street. I thought about him being dry. I thought about him laughing. I thought about the pink lace. By the time the tow truck arrived, I had stopped crying. I had made a decision. I didn't need to follow him. I needed to see what he had already done. The tow truck driver, a man named Mitchell who called me Little Lady twice, dropped me and the crippled Volvo back in my driveway at 10 o'clock. Harrison wasn't home yet. Gym night ran late tonight. I walked into the garage. I was wet, I was exhausted, and my hands were covered in road grime. But I had a plan. The Ring camera app was useless. The history had been wiped. But these devices, the older models like the one we had installed above the garage door, often had local storage, an SD card backup in case the Wi-Fi went down. Harrison probably didn't know that. Harrison was a set-it-and-forget-it guy. He understood cloud storage. He didn't understand hardware. I looked up at the camera. It was mounted 10 feet high, tucked under the eave. I looked at the heavy aluminum extension ladder hanging on the wall. It was 20 feet long and weighed as much as a small car. Harrison usually moved it. "Fuck it," I said aloud. I grabbed the ladder. It was awkward and ungainly. I dragged it across the concrete floor, the metal screeching like a banshee. I scraped my shin against a rung. I ignored the pain. I wrestled it upright, propping it against the siding. It wobbled. I hate heights. I have always hated heights. I get vertigo on a step stool. I looked up at the camera. I thought about Chloe. I thought about the text message. "Can't wait for the weekend." I put my foot on the first rung. The wind was still whipping around the house. The ladder shook. I gripped the side so hard my knuckles turned white. One step. Another step. I was halfway up. My heart was pounding in my throat. I squeezed my eyes shut for a second, forcing the dizziness down. "Focus on the data," I told myself. "The data is at the top." I reached the top. The camera was right there, its blue eyes staring at me. I needed a screwdriver. "You have got to be kidding me," I hissed. I had forgotten the screwdriver. I looked down. The concrete driveway looked miles away. I couldn't go down and come back up. I wouldn't have the nerve to do it twice. I dug into my pocket. I found my house key. It had a flat edge. I jammed the key into the small screw holding the panel shut. I turned it. It slipped. I cursed. I tried again, pressing harder, praying I didn't strip the screw or fall backward to my death. The screw turned, a quarter turn, another quarter turn. My legs were shaking so bad the ladder was vibrating against the house. Finally, the panel popped open. There, nestled in the black plastic slot, was a tiny micro SD card, the size of a fingernail. I pinched it with my cold, wet fingers. I pulled. It slid out. I put it in my mouth, holding it between my teeth like a pirate with a dagger, and began the terrifying descent. When my feet hit the solid ground, I didn't celebrate. I collapsed onto the cold concrete, clutching the tiny piece of plastic in my hand. I had it. I sat at the kitchen island, my laptop open, surrounded by a graveyard of adapters. The SD card was meaningless without a way to read it. My sleek, modern laptop didn't have a card slot. It had USB-C ports and arrogance. I had spent 20 minutes tearing apart the junk drawer, that universal repository of batteries, rubber bands, and obsolete technology that every household possesses. I had found 3 charging cables for phones we no longer owned, a dried-out glue stick, and finally, at the very back, a dusty multi-card reader from 2014. I plugged it in. The laptop didn't recognize it. "Come on," I whispered, "please." I wiggled the connection. A chime sounded. Device recognized. I inserted the micro SD card. A folder popped up. DCIM. I clicked it. Loading. The green progress bar crawled across the screen. It moved with the speed of a tectonic plate. Estimated time, 5 minutes. I stared at the screen. My leg bounced uncontrollably under the table. 5 minutes. In 5 minutes, Harrison could walk through the door. If he walked in now and saw the ladder in the driveway, I hadn't put it back, and me with the card reader, the game was over. He would know I knew. He would destroy the evidence. I stood up and ran to the garage. I dragged the ladder back to the wall. I didn't hang it up properly. I just shoved it behind the lawnmower so it looked undisturbed. I ran back inside. 2 minutes remaining. I poured myself a glass of water. My throat was parched. I drank it in one gulp. 30 seconds. The progress bar hit the end. A list of files appeared, hundreds of them. Video clips labeled by date and time. I sorted by date. I scrolled back to October 7th, the day of the gym night 2 weeks ago, the day I was in Atlanta, the day the timestamp on the flower receipt matched. There were 3 files for that morning. I clicked the first one, 6 a.m., darkness, a raccoon scuttling across the driveway. I clicked the second one, 6:30 a.m. The video player opened. It was grainy, black and white night vision shifting into dawn gray. The garage door opened. Harrison walked out. He was wearing his suit. He was carrying his briefcase. And then, walking behind him, was a woman. I paused the video. My finger hovered over the spacebar. I zoomed in. The resolution was terrible, pixelated blocks of gray and white, but it was enough. She was petite. She was wearing a trench coat belted tightly, but under the coat I could see bare legs. She was wearing heels. She was carrying a tote bag that looked suspiciously like the one Harrison had given me for Christmas last year, and I had lost. She stopped near the car. Harrison turned to her. He didn't look paranoid. He didn't look guilty. He looked happy. He reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her face. It was a gesture of such casual intimacy, it felt like a slap. She looked up at him and laughed. I couldn't hear the sound, but I saw her head tilt back. I recognized that tilt. I minimized the video window and opened a new tab, LinkedIn. I typed in Barrett Sinclair Private Equity. I clicked on People. I scrolled. I ignored the VPs and the directors. I went to the analysts. There she was, Chloe Dunham, junior analyst. I clicked on her profile picture. I held it up next to the paused video frame. Same nose, same hair, same height. And then the memory hit me. A dinner party, 3 months ago. Harrison had brought a few colleagues over for drinks. Chloe had been there. She had sat on my white sofa, drinking my wine, complimenting my art. "Your home is beautiful, Valerie," she had said. Her voice was breathy, sweet. "Harrison talks about you all the time. He says you're a powerhouse." "She's a machine," Harrison had said, squeezing my shoulder. "Works harder than anyone I know." He had made it sound like a compliment, but looking back, hearing the echo of his voice, it sounded like a justification. "She works hard. She's never here. She doesn't need me." "Chloe," Harrison had said later that night while we were cleaning up, "is really sharp, a grinder, first one in, last one out. Reminds me of you at that age." Reminds me of you. Toxic benevolence. He hadn't just cheated, he had insulted me while doing it. He had replaced me with a younger, sharper version and patted me on the head for being the prototype. I looked at the video again. She got into the passenger seat of his Tesla. My seat. I felt a cold metallic taste in my mouth. I saved the video file to my desktop. Then I saved it to a USB drive. Then I emailed it to a secure cloud account I used for sensitive client data. Triple redundancy, the consultant's way. Harrison came home at 11:30. I was in bed pretending to read a book on market volatility. "Hey," he said, poking his head into the bedroom. He looked flushed. His hair was slightly damp, likely from a quick shower at the apartment, not the gym. "Sorry I'm late. The machines were packed. Had to wait for the squat rack." "No problem," I said, not looking up from the page. "How was the workout?" "Brutal." "Leg day." He groaned theatrically and rubbed his quad. "I'm gonna jump in the shower. I feel gross." He walked into the master bathroom. I heard the water turn on. He had left his laptop bag on the chair in the corner. Usually he kept his work laptop locked down, but he had just come from the gym. He was relaxed. He was sloppy. I waited until I heard the shower door slide shut. I slipped out of bed. I opened the bag. The laptop was in sleep mode. I opened the lid. "Please don't require a password immediately. Please." The screen flickered to life. It was his Outlook calendar. He hadn't closed it. I scanned the week. Thursday, today, gym, lie. Friday, client lunch, Barrett. Saturday, golf. I scrolled to next week. Tuesday, October 28th. 4:00 p.m. Strategic review, Seaport Co-op, Room B. My eyes narrowed. A strategic review at a co-working space? Harrison's firm had a boardroom that overlooked the harbor. They had mahogany tables and catered lunches. They didn't rent rooms in hip co-working spaces unless they were hiding something, or unless the strategic review involved a certain junior analyst who lived down the street. I looked at the invitee list. Harrison Cross. Bennett Sinclair, Managing Director. Chloe Dunham. 4 other executive partners. Wait, Bennett Sinclair was going? The managing director? If the boss was going, it was a real meeting. So why was Chloe there? And why at a co-working space? And then it clicked. The firm was renovating the main floor. I had read about it in the business journal. They were displaced. This was a legitimate business meeting, a high-stakes presentation, and Chloe would be there, sitting across from him, acting professional, while wearing the clothes he bought her, while smirking at their secret. I pulled out my phone and snapped a photo of the screen. Tuesday, 2:00 p.m., Seaport Co-op. I had the who, I had the where, I had the when. I gently closed the laptop lid and slipped back into bed just as the water turned off. Harrison walked out a moment later, a towel wrapped around his waist. He smiled at me. "You're still awake?" he asked. "You look tired, babe. You should sleep." "I am tired," I said, marking my page in the book, "but I think I'm finally ready to rest." "Good," he said, turning off the light. "Sleep well." "Oh, I will," I whispered into the darkness. I wasn't going to sleep. I was going to plan. Tuesday was 5 days away. That gave me 5 days to prepare the presentation of a lifetime. Tuesday morning arrived not with sunlight, but with a violent lurch of my stomach. I woke up at 5:30, an hour before my alarm, and barely made it to the master bathroom before I was retching into the porcelain. My body was rejecting the day before it had even started. I knelt on the cold tile, gripping the rim of the toilet, shaking uncontrollably. "Get it together," I hissed at myself. "You are a senior consultant. You navigate hostile takeovers. You do not vomit over a cheating husband." But my body knew what my brain was trying to suppress. Today was the demolition. Today, I wasn't just ending a marriage. I was nuking a life. The house, the friends, the reputation, everything we had built for 7 years was about to be incinerated because I couldn't look away. I heard Harrison stirring in the bedroom. Heavy footsteps, the rustle of sheets. "Val?" His voice drifted through the door, thick with sleep. "You okay in there?" I flushed the toilet and splashed cold water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. My skin was gray. My eyes were bloodshot. I looked like a ghost. "Fine," I called back. My voice sounded jagged. "Just something I ate. Go back to sleep." "Can't," he said. "Big day, the strategic review." I froze, the towel pressed against my face. The strategic review. The audacity of him to say it out loud. He wasn't nervous about the board. He was excited about the audience. He was excited about performing for her. I walked out of the bathroom. Harrison was sitting on the edge of the bed, stretching. He looked annoyingly healthy. He looked like a man who slept the sleep of the remorseless. "You sure you're okay?" he asked, frowning slightly. "You look pale." "I'm fine," I lied. "Just a migraine." "You work too hard," he said, shaking his head with that pitying smile. "You really need to learn to pace yourself, honey. You burn the candle at both ends and then you crash. It's not sustainable." There it was, the toxic concern. "You are weak. You are fragile. You are lucky I'm here to watch you fall apart." "I'll be fine," I said, turning to the closet. "Good luck with the presentation." "Thanks," he said, standing up and heading for the shower. "It's going to be a long one. Don't wait up." "Oh, I won't wait up," I thought, pulling my suit bag from the back of the closet. "I'll be right there in the front row." I chose my armor carefully. The navy Armani suit, sharp shoulders, tailored waist, the one I wore when I had to fire people. I put on the stilettos that gave me 3 extra inches of height. If I was going to do this, I wasn't going to be the crying wife in pajamas. I was going to be the executioner. At 1:15 in the afternoon, I was trapped in a metal coffin in the middle of the Ted Williams tunnel. The Uber driver, a man named Sergey who smelled faintly of spearmint and stale tobacco, sighed loudly and tapped the steering wheel. We hadn't moved in 10 minutes. Brake lights stretched out ahead of us like a river of red lava. "Big accident," Sergey said, pointing at the GPS screen. 2 lanes closed, maybe 30 minutes delay. My blood ran cold. 30 minutes? I choked out. "I can't do 30 minutes. I have to be there by 2 o'clock. "We try," he shrugged. "But tunnel is tunnel." I stared at the digital clock on the dashboard. 1:18, 1:19. Panic clawed at my throat. If I missed the start of the meeting, I missed the impact. If I walked in late, after the tension had broken, after Harrison had already charmed them, I would just look like a disruption. I needed to catch him in the act of being confident. "Think," I commanded myself. "Problem solve." I pulled up the map on my phone. We were a mile from the exit. A mile in a tunnel with no breakdown lane and recycled air that tasted like exhaust. I could run. The thought was insane. A woman in 4-inch heels running through an active traffic tunnel? I would be arrested. I would be killed. But sitting here was worse. Sitting here meant he won. Sitting here meant he got to finish his presentation, high-five Bennett, and go have celebratory drinks with Chloe while I sat in traffic stewing in my own failure. "Sergey," I said, my voice dangerously calm, "how close can you get me to the exit ramp?" "We are here," he gestured to the wall of cars. "Nowhere to go." I tapped my foot. Thump, thump, thump. The sound echoed in the silent car. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay." I opened the window. The roar of the tunnel fans was deafening. I needed air. I needed to not scream. 125. The cars inched forward. 10 feet. Stop. I gripped my purse so hard the leather creaked. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was the pink bodysuit. It felt heavy, like a loaded gun. "Please," I whispered to the universe, a universe that had given me flat tires and locked phones. "Just give me this one thing." Suddenly, the lane to our right began to move. A tow truck had cleared the obstruction. Sergey swerved aggressively, cutting off a BMW, and accelerated. "We go now," he grunted. I let out a breath that sounded like a sob. We were moving. We were going to make it. The Seaport Co-op was located in a renovated warehouse that screamed tech money. Exposed brick, reclaimed wood, and a lobby that looked more like a coffee shop than a place of business. I burst through the revolving doors at 1:52. I was sweating in my suit. My hair was windblown from the run from the curb. I marched toward the elevators. "Excuse me, ma'am!" A voice sharp as a razor wire stopped me. I turned. Sitting behind a desk made of raw concrete was a receptionist who looked about 22. She had a nose ring, cool glasses, and an expression of absolute authority. "You need a badge to go up," she said, not looking up from her iPad. I walked over to the desk. "I'm here for the Barrett Sinclair Strategic Review, Room B." She tapped the screen. "Name?" "Valerie Hartwell," I said. She scrolled. "I don't have a Hartwell on the list. I have Cross, Sinclair, Dunham, Peterson, Weiss." She looked up at me. "Are you at the catering?" The insult stung, but I used it. Improvise. "No," I said, pitching my voice low and annoyed. "I'm with the external audit team. I was called in last minute to bring the supplemental compliance handouts. Bennett Sinclair is going to be furious if these aren't on the table when he starts." I patted my oversized tote bag. "Do you want to be the one to tell him his data is missing?" It was a gamble. Using the boss's name. Pretending to be indispensable. The girl hesitated. She looked at my suit. It was expensive. She looked at my bag. It was expensive. She looked at my face, which was currently locked in a mask of, "I will fire you and your ancestors." "Room B is on the 4th floor," she said, printing a sticker that said, "Visitor. Take the second elevator." "Thank you," I said, snatching the badge. I walked to the elevator. My knees were shaking. I pressed the button for the 4th floor. I watched the numbers climb. 1, 2, 3, 4. The doors slid open. The 4th floor was a maze of glass. Every office, every conference room was visible. It was designed for transparency, which was ironic given the amount of deceit happening in Room B. I walked down the hallway. The carpet dampened the sound of my heels. I felt like a predator stalking prey. I saw the sign, "Conference Room." I stopped 10 feet away, pressing myself against a structural pillar. I looked through the glass. It was a fishbowl, a long, rectangular table made of blonde wood. 6 men in suits sat around it, looking bored but attentive. Bennett Sinclair was at the head of the table, arms crossed, listening. And standing at the front, near the large monitor displaying a graph of Q3 earnings, was Harrison. He looked magnificent. I hated him for it. He was wearing his closer suit, the charcoal one with the subtle pinstripe. He was gesturing at the screen, confident, animated. He was in his element. And there, sitting to his right, was Chloe. She was taking notes on a tablet. She was wearing a cream-colored blouse and a pencil skirt. She looked professional. She looked innocent. But every time Harrison made a point, he glanced at her. A microsecond flick of the eyes, and every time he did, she smiled. a small, private smile that said, "I know what you look like without that suit." The intimacy of it was nauseating. It was happening right in front of the board, right in front of the boss, and nobody saw it but me. I watched them for a full minute. I watched the way he leaned toward her when he clicked the next slide. I watched the way she shifted in her chair to mirror his posture. My heart, which had been racing since I woke up, suddenly slowed down. A cold calm settled over me. He thinks he's winning, I thought. He thinks he has it all. The wife at home, the mistress at work, the career on the rise. I gripped the handle of my bag. I felt the shape of the bodysuit through the leather. Time to break the glass. I didn't knock. Knocking implies you are asking for permission. I wasn't asking. I reached out and grabbed the brushed steel handle. It was cool to the touch. I pushed the heavy glass door open. Click. The sound of the latch releasing cut through Harrison's voice like a knife. And if we look at the EBITDA projections for... He stopped. Every head in the room turned. 6 men, 1 woman, 1 husband. I stepped into the room. I didn't rush. I walked with the deliberate, measured pace of a woman walking down the aisle. The silence was absolute. You could hear the hum of the projector fan. You could hear the traffic from the street 4 stories down. Harrison's face went through a complex series of contortions. Confusion, recognition, shock, terror. "Valerie," he said. His voice cracked. It was a high, thin sound stripped of all its corporate baritone. I didn't look at him. I looked at Bennett Sinclair. "Mr. Sinclair," I said, nodding politely. "Gentlemen." I walked past the empty chairs. I walked past the pitcher of water. I walked right up to the front of the room into Harrison's personal space. He smelled like sandalwood and betrayal. "Val," he hissed, his eyes darting to his boss. "What are you doing? This is a board meeting." "I know," I said. My voice was conversational, pleasant. I wouldn't interrupt if it wasn't urgent. I turned to look at Chloe. She had frozen. Her pen was hovering over her tablet. Her eyes were wide, staring at me. She looked young, terrified. Good, I thought. I turned back to the table. The polished wood was cluttered with handouts and coffee cups. There was a clear space right in front of Bennett. "I'm sorry to disrupt the Q3 analysis," I said, reaching into my bag, "but I found some company property that seems to have been misplaced." I pulled out the pink lace bodysuit. It was a vibrant, aggressive neon pink. In the sterile corporate lighting of the conference room, it looked radioactive. I didn't throw it. I didn't crumple it. I laid it out on the table, gently. I smoothed the wrinkles. I arranged the straps so the Vixen Vibe tag was clearly visible. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out the 3 printed photographs. Photo 1, the receipt from the Salted Oyster. Photo 2, the bank transaction for Lux Flower Shop. Photo 3, the grainy black and white still of Harrison and Chloe leaving my garage at dawn. I placed them next to the bodysuit, forming a little shrine of infidelity. "I believe this belongs to your junior analyst," I said, pointing a manicured finger at Chloe, "since she left it in my bed." I looked at Harrison. He was gray. He looked like he was about to vomit, mirroring my morning perfectly. "And Harrison," I said, my voice dropping an octave, losing the pleasantry, becoming pure steel. "You told me this was an anniversary gift, but we both know it's an extra small, and I haven't been an extra small since 1999. I turned to Bennett. He was staring at the underwear with his mouth slightly open. He looked from the lace to Harrison, then to Chloe, then back to the lace. The gears were turning. The liability, the HR nightmare, the lawsuit. "I thought you should know," I said to the room at large, "before you promote him. Character counts, doesn't it?" Harrison opened his mouth. "Valerie, please, we can talk about—" "No," I cut him off. "We can't." I picked up my bag. I felt lighter. 10 pounds lighter. The nausea was gone. "I'll let you get back to your projections," I said. "I'm sure you have a lot to discuss." The walk to the elevator was a blur of gray carpet and recessed lighting. I held my head high, shoulders back, maintaining the posture of a woman who hadn't just nuked her husband's career with a pair of polyester panties. But the moment the elevator doors slid shut, sealing me in the steel box, my strings were cut. I collapsed. I didn't swoon gracefully like a heroine in a period drama. I slid down the wall until I hit the floor, my knees knocking together with a violence that rattled my teeth. My breath came in short, sharp gasps. Oh God, I thought. Oh God, oh God, oh God. I looked at my hands. They were trembling so hard I couldn't make a fist. The adrenaline that had carried me through the traffic, past the receptionist, and into the lion's den was draining out of me, leaving behind a cold, hollow terror. I had done it. I had actually done it. But now the reality was setting in. I hadn't just embarrassed him. I had humiliated a narcissist in front of his audience. Harrison wouldn't just be mad, he would be lethal. The elevator dinged at the lobby. I scrambled up, using the handrail to hoist myself. I smoothed my skirt. I checked my reflection in the polished metal doors. My face was pale, but my eyes were dry. "Keep moving," the consultant in me commanded. "Motion is survival." I walked out of the building. The air outside was cold and smelled of the harbor. I inhaled it deeply, trying to steady my heart rate. I needed to get away. I needed a fortress. But first, I needed a general. Giselle Vance didn't have an office. She had a command center. Located in a glass tower on State Street, her firm smelled of mahogany and billable hours. I sat in a leather chair that cost more than my first car, clutching a cup of water Giselle's assistant had brought me. Giselle sat opposite, reviewing the notes I had scribbled on a legal pad in the waiting room. She was 60, with silver hair cut into a sharp bob and eyes that could peel paint. "So," Giselle said, removing her reading glasses, "you walked into a board meeting, dropped the mistress's underwear on the table, and walked out?" "Yes," I whispered. "And you have photos? Timestamps? Financial records?" "Yes." Giselle leaned back and let out a low whistle. "Well, Valerie, you certainly didn't go for the soft launch." She tapped her pen on the desk. "Here is what is going to happen next. Harrison is going to be in shock for about 2 hours. Then the shock will turn into rage. Then the rage will turn into strategy." She leaned forward, her voice dropping. "He isn't going to apologize. Men like Harrison Cross don't apologize. They counterattack. He will try to frame this as you being unstable. He will tell everyone you are having a breakdown. He will try to freeze your assets." My stomach clenched. "He can't. The accounts are joint." "Which means he has just as much right to drain them as you do," Giselle said sharply. "And he will. He'll view it as protecting the assets from his hysterical wife." She picked up her phone. "We are filing for divorce immediately. I'm getting a temporary restraining order based on the premise of financial abuse and potential volatility. But Valerie, you need to go home right now." "Why?" "Because possession is 9/10 of the law," she said. "If he gets back to the house before you and he changes the locks, you are the one sleeping in a hotel. Go home, secure the property, change the codes, and do not, under any circumstances, let him inside." "What if he breaks in?" "Then you call the police," Giselle said, "and you hope he does, because a police report is the best leverage in a divorce settlement." The drive home was a race against a ghost. Every Tesla I saw in the rearview mirror made my heart hammer against my ribs. Was that him? Was he behind me? I called the locksmith from the car. "Emergency service," the dispatcher said. "We can have someone there in 40 minutes. "I need someone in 10, I said, my voice rising. "I will pay triple. I will pay whatever you want. I have a security situation." "I'll see what I can do." I pulled into the driveway. The house looked peaceful. The afternoon sun slanted across the lawn. It looked like the home of a happy couple. It felt like a bunker. I ran inside. I didn't take off my shoes. I grabbed the spare keys. I grabbed the garage door opener remote from Harrison's workbench and removed the battery. I went to the keypad on the garage door and reset the code. 3721. The year I graduated. Something he wouldn't guess. I stood by the front window, watching the street. The locksmith's van pulled up 20 minutes later. A man named Dave hopped out, looking cheerful and oblivious to the fact that he was fortifying a war zone. "Just a standard rekey?" Dave asked, looking at the heavy oak door. "All exterior doors," I said. "Deadbolts, too." "And I need it done fast." "Boyfriend trouble?" he asked, pulling a drill from his belt. "Husband," I corrected, "and he's on his way." Dave stopped smiling. He worked in silence after that. I paced the hallway, checking my watch. 4:30. The meeting would have ended. The shouting would have ended. Harrison would be on the road. Drill. Whir. Click. "Front door done," Dave said. "Do the back," I ordered. I checked my phone. No texts from Harrison. That was worse than angry texts. Silence meant he was planning. Silence meant he was coming. Dave left at 5:15. I locked the new deadbolt behind him and leaned my forehead against the cool wood. Safe. At 5:22, the Tesla pulled into the driveway. I watched on the ring monitor I had reconnected to my phone. Harrison got out. He wasn't running, he wasn't storming. He walked slowly, his suit jacket over his arm, his tie loosened. He looked tired. He looked devastatingly sad. He walked up to the door and put his key in the lock. It didn't turn. He jiggled it. He pulled it out, looked at it, and tried again. Then he rang the doorbell. Ding-dong. I didn't move. I stood in the kitchen, just out of the line of sight of the sidelight windows. Ding-dong. "Valerie?" His voice came through the door. It wasn't angry, it was soft, concerned. "Val, honey, I know you're in there. The key isn't working." I stayed silent. "Val, please open the door. We need to talk. I'm worried about you." Worried about me. The audacity. "I know you're upset," he continued, leaning his forehead against the wood. "I know today was intense. But you're not thinking clearly. You made a scene, Val. People are worried. Bennett is worried. He was doing it. He was spinning the narrative. I'm not the cheater. You're the crazy woman who made a scene. Valerie, if you don't open the door, I'm going to have to call for a wellness check. I can't leave you alone if you're in a state." My blood boiled. He was threatening me with the police under the guise of care. I walked to the door. I didn't open it. I spoke through the wood. "I'm not in a state, Harrison. I'm in a divorce. Go stay at the apartment on Congress Street. I'm sure Chloe has room." There was a silence. Then a shift. "This is my house, Valerie," he said, his voice dropping the concern and revealing the steel beneath. "My name is on the deed. Open the goddamn door." "Giselle Vance has already filed for exclusive occupancy," I lied. I didn't know if she had filed it yet, but it sounded good. "If you try to break in, I will call the police, and given what happened today, who do you think they'll believe? The calm woman inside, or the man who was just caught with his mistress's underwear?" He kicked the door. A sharp, violent thud that made the frame rattle. "You are going to regret this," he said. "I am going to destroy you, Valerie. I'm going to leave you with nothing." "You already did," I said. "Now get off my porch." I watched on the monitor as he paced the porch for another minute, running his hands through his hair. Then, realizing he wasn't getting in, he stormed back to the Tesla. He peeled out of the driveway, leaving tire marks on the asphalt. I slid down the door until I hit the floor. I grabbed a bottle of wine from the rack, the expensive Pinot he was saving, and drank from the bottle. Pain required action. The action was survival. 2 days later, the adrenaline had faded into a dull, throbbing headache. I needed food. The fridge was a wasteland of condiments and a shriveled lemon. I drove to the Whole Foods on the other side of town, wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap, hoping to avoid anyone who knew me. I filled my cart with comfort food: cheese, crackers, chocolate, expensive olives. I stood in the checkout line, watching the cashier scan the items. "That will be $142, the cashier said. I swiped my debit card. Declined. I frowned. Try it again. Chip might be dirty. She inserted it. Waited. Declined. "Do you have another form of payment?" she asked. The line behind me shifted. I could feel the impatience radiating from the woman in yoga pants behind me. I pulled out the joint credit card, the Visa. Declined. My stomach dropped to my shoes. I pulled up the banking app on my phone. Access denied. Contact administrator. He had done it. He had frozen everything. Or worse, he had drained it. Giselle had warned me, but I hadn't moved fast enough. I thought there were safeguards. I thought banks required 2 signatures for massive withdrawals. "Ma'am," the cashier said, "people are waiting." I looked at the cart full of food. I looked at the line of people staring at me. The shame was hot and prickling on my neck. I wasn't the powerful consultant who dropped lingerie on a boardroom table anymore. I was a woman who couldn't buy cheese. I have to go," I stammered. "You don't want the groceries?" "I can't," I whispered. I turned and walked away, leaving the cart right there at the register. I walked out of the store, my face burning, feeling the eyes of strangers boring into my back. I got into my car and checked my purse. I had $20 in cash, a $20 bill. That was my net worth right now. I drove to a gas station and bought a bag of pretzels and a bottle of water. I sat in the parking lot and ate the dry pretzels, forcing them down past the lump in my throat. "This is war," I told myself. "He wants to starve me out. He wants me to crawl back and beg." I crunched a pretzel. I will eat dirt before I ask him for a cent. My phone buzzed. Then it buzzed again. Then again. I looked at the screen. It wasn't Harrison. It was everyone else. Text from Sarah. "Hey Val, just heard from Harrison. He said you're going through a really rough patch mentally. I'm so sorry. Let me know if you need to talk." Text from Mark, Harrison's friend. "Val, Harrison is really worried about you. He said you're off your meds. Please don't do anything rash." Text from Mom. "Valerie, why did Harrison call me asking if you have a history of psychosis? What is going on?" I stared at the screen, my vision blurring. Off my meds. I didn't take meds. I took multivitamins. He was seeding the ground. He was telling everyone I was crazy so that when the story about the underwear came out, it wouldn't look like righteous vengeance. It would look like a manic episode. It would look like the delusions of a sick woman. "You bastard," I whispered. He wasn't fighting me with facts. He was fighting me with pity. He was weaponizing his own concern to discredit me. I started typing a reply to Sarah. "He's lying. He cheated on me." I stopped. If I sent that, I sounded defensive. I sounded crazy. "He's lying, believe me," is exactly what a crazy person says. I deleted the text. I needed to be smarter. I couldn't fight the rumors one by one. I needed to let him spin his web, and then I needed to burn the whole forest down. I put the phone down. I didn't reply to anyone. Let them wonder. Let them worry. I picked up the file folder Giselle had given me. Financial disclosure forms. If he wanted to play dirty, I was ready. He thought cutting off my money would break me. He forgot that I audited companies for a living. I knew how to find money. And more importantly, I knew how to find where he was hiding it. The knock on the door came 3 days later. It was a polite, rhythmic rap, nothing like Harrison's desperate pounding. I froze in the kitchen, a half-eaten apple in my hand. I checked the monitor. A man in a windbreaker holding a large manila envelope. I didn't open the door. I spoke through the intercom. "Who is it?" "Valerie Hartwell?" the man asked, looking at the camera. "I have a delivery for you." "Leave it on the porch." "I need a signature, ma'am. It's legal correspondence." My stomach turned over. Legal correspondence. I opened the door 3 inches, keeping the chain on. The man slid the envelope through the crack. "You've been served," he said, his face blank. He turned and walked away before I could even touch the paper. I closed the door and locked it. I ripped open the envelope. The header was thick and black. Superior Court of Massachusetts. Plaintiff, Harrison Cross. Defendant, Valerie Hartwell. Complaint, defamation, tortious interference with business relations, intentional infliction of emotional distress. I scanned the document. My eyes caught the numbers. Plaintiff seeks damages in the amount of $5 million for loss of future earnings and reputational harm. $5 million. He was suing me. He was suing me for destroying the career he had used to betray me. I slid down the wall, clutching the paper. The audacity was breathtaking. It was a masterpiece of gaslighting. He wasn't the cheater. He was the victim of a vindictive and mentally unstable spouse who had orchestrated a public spectacle. He wanted $5 million. I had $20 and a bag of pretzels. I laughed. It was a jagged, ugly sound. Let him sue, I thought, feeling a cold, dark anger replace the fear. You can't get blood from a stone, Harrison, but you can certainly break your shovel trying. It's an intimidation tactic, Giselle said, throwing the lawsuit onto her desk like it was a piece of trash. He knows he can't win on the merits. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation. You didn't lie. You showed them his underwear. He says I doctored the photos, I said, my voice shaking. He claims the receipt was for a client lunch and I photoshopped the timestamp. Let him claim, Giselle said. We have the deposition on Thursday. This is where we break him. She leaned forward, her eyes hard. Valerie, listen to me. His lawyer is Elliot Marsh. He's a pit bull. He's going to try to rattle you. He's going to ask about your mental health. He's going to ask about the medication rumors Harrison started. He wants you to cry. He wants you to scream. If you get emotional, the video of the deposition goes to the judge and you look like the crazy wife. I won't cry, I said. You might, Giselle said. He's going to say things that hurt. He's going to blame you for the affair. He's going to say you were cold, frigid, absent. You have to be a statue. You answer yes, no, or I do not recall. Do you understand? I understand. And the financials? Giselle asked. Did you find anything else on LFS Holdings? I'm working on it, I said. I spent the last 2 days on the Secretary of State's website. The registry is obscured, but I found the filing agent. Good, Giselle said. Keep digging. If we can prove he spent marital funds on her, the defamation suit dies and we get everything. I nodded. I went home and made a pot of coffee. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my laptop cross-referencing LLC filings with the timestamps on the photos. I was looking for a ghost in the machine. The conference room smelled of stale coffee and aggression. Harrison sat across the table. He looked thinner. His suit was slightly loose at the collar. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Next to him was Elliot Marsh, a man with a comb-over and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. A court reporter sat at the end of the table, fingers hovering over her machine. A video camera was pointed at my face. Ms. Hartwell, Marsh began, his voice oily. Let's talk about the morning of October 28th. You stated in your affidavit that you felt compelled to enter the meeting. Would you describe your emotional state at that time as volatile? No, I said. I would describe it as resolved. Resolved? Marsh repeated, checking a note. Interesting, because we have texts from your friends stating you were off your meds and spiraling. Do you take medication for anxiety, Ms. Hartwell? No. Have you ever? No. So your husband is lying when he says you have a history of manic episodes? I looked at Harrison. He was studying his cuticles. Yes, I said. He is lying. Marsh smirked. He's lying. Everyone is lying but you. The board members who said you were screaming, are they lying? I didn't scream, I said calmly. I spoke clearly. You threw underwear at a managing director. I placed evidence on a table. Marsh leaned in. You ruined a man's life because you were insecure about your age and your weight. Isn't that the truth? You found a garment that didn't fit and you snapped. My hands clenched under the table. I wanted to leap across the mahogany and strangle him. Insecure. Snapped. He was using my own private vulnerabilities, things I had whispered to Harrison in the dark, against me. No, I said. The word was a stone. You didn't verify the receipt, Marsh pressed. You didn't know who Chloe was. You just assumed. You guessed. And you destroyed a 20-year career on a guess. I didn't guess, I said. Then prove it, Marsh snapped. Show me the proof that Harrison Cross spent a single dime on this woman that wasn't a business expense. I looked at Giselle. She gave me a microscopic nod. I reached into my bag. I'm glad you asked, I said. I pulled out a single sheet of paper. It wasn't a photo. It was a printout from the Massachusetts Secretary of Commonwealth Corporations Division. I did some research on LFS. Holdings, I said, sliding the paper across the table. The company Harrison wrote a check to for $2,500. The check he claimed was for flowers. Marsh picked up the paper. He frowned. LFS stands for Love for Sale, apparently, I said. A terrible name, really, but the registered agent isn't a florist. It's a residential address. I pointed to the line. Registered Agent Chloe Dunham. Address, 342 Congress Street. Harrison's head snapped up. His face drained of color. And, I continued, pulling out a second sheet, this is a bank statement from a shell account I found linked to Harrison's Social Security number. I found it by calling the payroll department of his old firm and asking where his consulting bonus was deposited last year. They gave me the routing number. I slammed the second paper down. $50,000, I said, transferred to LFS Holdings on September 1st. 6 weeks before I found the bodysuit. The room went deadly silent. That's $50,000 of marital assets, I said to the camera, funneled to a shell company owned by his mistress. That is not defamation, Mr. Marsh. That is fraud. That is embezzlement of marital funds. I looked at Harrison. He looked like a man who had just realized he wasn't fighting a crazy ex-wife. He was fighting a forensic auditor. And just for good measure, I added, pulling out a USB drive, this is the audio from my front porch camera from 3 days ago, where Harrison kicks my door and screams, "I am going to destroy you." It contradicts his sworn statement that he came over to check on my wellness. Marsh looked at the papers. He looked at Harrison. He looked at the USB drive. He closed his folder. "We need a recess," Marsh said. His voice was tight. "I bet you do," I said. We sat in the waiting room for 10 minutes. Giselle was grinning like a shark. "You got him," she whispered. "The LFS link? Genius. How did you find it?" "I guessed the password to his old email," I admitted. "It was Chloe2024. He's not creative." The door opened. Marsh walked out alone. He looked tired. The oily arrogance was gone. "Mr. Cross is prepared to withdraw the lawsuit," Marsh said stiffly. "I'm sure he is," Giselle said, "but we're not done. He is also prepared to sign the separation agreement as originally proposed," Marsh continued. 50-50 split of assets. "No," I said. Marsh blinked. "Excuse me?" "He stole $50,000, I said, and he tried to destroy my reputation, and he sued me for $5 million. I stood up. "I want the house. Fully. I want his retirement account, fully, and I want him to pay my legal fees." "That's unreasonable," Marsh sputtered. "Then we go back in there," I said, pointing to the deposition room, "and I put the $50,000 fraud on the record. And then I take it to the district attorney." Marsh stared at me. He looked at Giselle. Giselle shrugged. "She's right. Dissipation of assets is a crime, Elliot." Marsh sighed. "I'll talk to him." He went back inside. 2 minutes later, he came out. "He agrees," Marsh said, "but he wants a non-disclosure agreement. He doesn't want you talking to the press." Fine, I said. I don't need the press. I have the house. Walking out of that building felt like learning to breathe again. The air on State Street was cold and biting, but it tasted sweet. I had the house. I had the money. I had my dignity. I stopped at a trash can on the corner. I took the manila envelope containing the lawsuit, the one that demanded $5 million, and I dropped it into the bin. Thud. I hailed a taxi. Where to? The driver asked. The seaport, I said. I want oysters. I went to the Salted Oyster, the same place on the receipt. I sat at the bar. I ordered a dozen oysters and a glass of Sancerre. I ate them slowly. They were briny and cold. They tasted like victory. I looked around the restaurant. I wondered which table they had sat at. I wondered if he had held her hand. It didn't matter anymore. He was gone. He was a line item in a ledger that had been balanced and closed. I took out my phone. I unblocked Sarah. I unblocked Mark. I posted a single photo to Instagram, just the glass of wine and the oysters. Caption, closing the deal. I didn't explain. I didn't need to. I took a sip of the wine. It was crisp. It was perfect. I was alone. I was divorced. I was 40. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of any of it. The renovation of the house is finally done. I turned Harrison's man cave, a room dedicated to watching sports he didn't play, into a home office. It has floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a desk that faces the garden. I'm sitting there now, writing this. My consulting business has exploded. Turns out people like hiring a woman who can find a needle in a haystack while under fire. I have 3 new clients this month alone. I'm billing double my old rate. As for Harrison, the grapevine is efficient. He was fired from his new consulting gig after a background check flagged the lawsuit he filed against me. Ironic, isn't it? Public records are public. He's living in a studio apartment in Quincy. He drives a used Honda. And Chloe? LFS Holdings was dissolved. I heard she moved back to Ohio. Apparently, the romance didn't survive the poverty. It's easy to be in love when you're spending $50,000 of someone else's money on flowers and weekends away. It's a lot harder when you're splitting a heating bill in a drafty apartment. I ran into Bennett Sinclair yesterday at a coffee shop. He looked awkward for a second, then he nodded. A respectful nod. The kind one shark gives another. I nodded back. I still have the receipt from the locksmith on my bulletin board. It cost me $400 to change the locks that day. Best money I ever spent. Sometimes, late at night, I wake up and reach for the other side of the bed. It's cold. It's empty. And every single time I smile, stretch out my limbs into the glorious, unclaimed space, and go right back to sleep. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.